Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today's episode is about how change comes when you just start talking about the things you care about. This week's episode features Lánre Adeleye, and among many other things, Lánre is the co-founder of The Junior, which is an organization committed to making change in the creative industry. It was so great to talk with Lánre, and I think that he shared a lot of great advice throughout our conversation. So, without further ado, let's get started with this episode featuring Lánre Adeleye.
Hi, my name is Lánre Adeleye. I'm the co-founder of this network called the Junior Network. We are an organization who are trying to make change in the creative industry. But beyond that, I've recently just left the NCS Youth Advisory Board and also recently just left the Diana Award Young Changemakers program as a co-producer. But outside of all of that, I'm a designer in a financial institution. So that's a just to throw it on in there. So yeah.
That is a great place to get started, Lánre, and I'm really excited to learn more about the Junior and just all of this work that you've been doing. But before we dive in, can you tell me a little bit more about your background and what inspired you to get started making change and just getting involved with these different organizations?
Well, that's a good one. I feel like you have to I feel like I have to always take people back to when I was like 14 or even further back, like when I was 8. My mum passed away. So when I was really young, and um it seems like a weird thing to start with, but like experiencing like grief and bereavement kind of taught me about the inequalities of like the world. So for example, when I was in primary school, as like obviously when my mum had died, I was getting counseling obviously to help with bereavement, etc. And as I kind of got older, like that kind of stopped, and I realized that there wasn't really adequate access to mental health services and etc. when you're in school, whether it's like bereavement or just other anxieties that young people face. And I realized that was kind of wrong. Obviously, that angered me, and I didn't know what I could do about it. And then the Diana Award came, and I was doing this thing called the Diana Award mentoring program, where they go into schools and they have around 12 mentors who are like, I think we had mentors from PricewaterhouseCoopers and Vodafone, and they kind of took us through just kind of what they did, and encouraged us to pursue different careers and different backgrounds. And as part of the Diana Award mentoring program, they did something called social action, a social action project, where you had to campaign on something that you cared about. So obviously for us, we it was part of a group, so there was about 12 of us, and we campaigned on anti-bullying and kind of support for young people who are LGBTQ plus in our community. So we kind of campaigned on that in our school, and it was like about 3 months. It was really small, and we did. We all like I was 14, I was 13, 14. So we did like a bake sale to kind of raise money for an anti-bullying organization, and can't remember what the other one was because it was so long ago. But that basically introduced me into social action and how you can use your different skills in that scenario. And it was such a great experience. And from that, I got to go to California, Facebook headquarters, to like kind of present all of the social action work we did. And basically, from that moment, it basically indoctrinated me into a life of like creating change in a way. So yeah, that's kind of a like a quick short story of what kind of started it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that was such a great overview. And I think that is such a common thread through a lot of these conversations that I've had where you start with one opportunity, like yours with the Diana Award, and then you just keep finding more and more, and it's like a snowball effect. And so I think that makes perfect sense. But throughout all of these different experiences, can you share some of the most memorable moments or almost like a highlight reel throughout your time doing social action? I'm sure there's been a lot of behind the scenes work that often goes unseen, but can you share some of the moments that stick out to you the most?
Yeah, so oh God, there's so many. Like I feel like you talk about like loads of the unseen moments, but I feel like for me, a bit like why you do this podcast is about just like meeting new people. So, for example, obviously when we are doing the Dynamo mentoring program, I was already in school. I kind of already knew the people doing it, but I was like people in different year groups. So I got to connect with them, and then I went on to do something called Youth Parliament, and I met literally hundreds of different young people just through that. And then youth councils and My Life, My Say, and then like NCS and Bite Back. I feel like that's the most memorable part of like meeting new people and understanding like their backgrounds and how they create change in their communities. I think that's the most like rewarding part for me. And then like the unglamorous stuff, I feel like it's maybe just like when you don't really like I feel like the part people see is like all of the successes and the parts that you win. I feel like there are times where you really campaign for something and then you don't see tangible change and you spend so much time, trying to campaign and to put pressure on, like, for example, the government. So I used to be part of this organization called Bite Back. Probably like 2 years ago, I left. I started off as a youth activist and then became a member of their team doing digital marketing. But I feel like there was so many moments in that role where, we campaign on, for example, ending junk food marketing before 9 p.m. and then Boris Johnson at the time backtracked on his promises. So it's like one of those things where, you don't see that every day. Yeah, those are the two ones. And then the two shameful plugs, obviously I mentioned it before, going to like Facebook headquarters is absolutely amazing. I've never left a country, so it's kind of nice to feel like that experience of going abroad and, talking to Americans and people you never met before about the work you're doing in the UK. That's really great. And then the other one, a still shameful plug, it's my Twitter header, meeting Prince William and Princess of Wales, um, kind of talking about mental health with NCS like that. Those were like two of the nice moments and a good photo op. So yeah.
That is such an important point that you just brought up because it might not always be wins. There might be losses or setbacks. And you've had some amazing wins, though, meeting amazing people, going to the US. And it's just great that you've had all of those opportunities. So, of course, you've worked with so many different organizations in the youth sector, and you've gotten to see the evolution of that sector in the UK, which I think is very cool. What are your thoughts on how the youth sector has changed? And that can be for better or worse. I just love to get your thoughts in general.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends on like what you refer to. Like, obviously talking about NCS, depending on what I can say, like, I'm really sad that obviously the government decided to get rid of the program. I feel like there's so many benefits and there's so much more it could give. I feel like especially this year has been really tough for youth services, especially. So obviously, I was part of Youth Parliament back when it was managed by the British Youth Council. The British Youth Council shut down earlier this year, which was a massive shock across like the youth sector. So I feel like I'm very optimistic for the future. But when I think of the future, I'm thinking about 2026, 2027. But I'm really like interested in like what about the now? Like what about like what are young people gonna do to fill the gap? And I know there's so many organizations and so many different partners who can fill that gap. I just feel quite worried that, we won't be able to reach that many young people in like the next 2025, so the next year. But obviously that's like the negative and then the sad part about it. But to your point around like there are so many youth organizations. I've been part of so many youth organizations in the last like decade. And I'm obviously really happy to kind of see that there are not only just like youth organizations who like, the Diana Award and the King's Trust and Duke of Edinburgh Award, but there are so many that are like obviously made by, I don't want to say old people, but like non-young people, but I really like how there's a rise in the movement of youth-led and organizations found by young people for young people, because I feel like we as Gen Z, Gen Alpha know what we need to kind of excel in life. So I kind of like how, there's so many young people kind of taking that initiative to create their own organizations that can address the needs of young people in their societies as well.
I love that. And I think that is spot on as far as youth led, youth founded organizations. And I just hope that people, especially young people, continue to create organizations themselves, especially if they don't see the bigger older, more established organizations making the changes that they'd like to see. I think that is very important. And along those lines, I would love to talk with you about your own work at the Junior. Can you tell me a little bit more about the Junior? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but give me a little pitch.
Yeah, like it's so hard because like we do a lot of talking online, and I had an interview where they actually asked for results. I was like, oh, that's a really good question, but like we're all very much behind the scenes at the moment. So the junior, which was essentially born from a text message at the beginning of 2023. So me and my friend Ella. We were doing a apprenticeship multiverse, and I have nothing bad to say about multiverse apprenticeships. We are doing digital marketing, but I felt for us, we really wanted to like tap into the creative route. If you've ever done programmatic marketing, it's very much numbers and Excel spreadsheets, and that wasn't my bag and it wasn't my thing. As much as I did love my job at the time. So Ella texted me saying, "Oh, we should create like a meetup for like creatives who haven't gone to uni." And then my response, it took me 8 months to respond to that message because I'm so bad at replying to everyone. But I said, oh, why don't we think slightly bigger and do like a whole network and events tailored to junior creatives? So that's where the junior was essentially born. It was for juniors, by juniors. And essentially, we've kind of changed our messaging over the last year or so. But like the junior is basically working to create a more equitable industry for junior creatives. So I did a talk at D&AD earlier this year, at the D&AD festival earlier this year, about basically opportunity crisis and what it's like being a junior creative in the here and now. And one thing we found, we were talking to multiple creatives too, because obviously I have my own experience, but obviously everyone's experience is different. So to address that talk, we spoke to a numerous number of creatives, both in the UK and outside of the UK. There was three key themes that kind of emerged from that. One of them is being a creative is great, but you don't get paid a lot. And if you want to follow your dreams, um, you sometimes have to pick between following your dreams and like going where the money's at. And we don't think that's fair. This is more specific to UK, but like right now, London is like an epicenter for creativity, but there are so many talented people who live outside London and in the north, who I feel like are missing out on opportunities because they're so focused in London. And the third one is it's just a terrible job market. Obviously, not just for the creative industry, but everywhere. A lot of companies aren't hiring junior creatives. So we're trying to work to change that. We're doing that in four ways, if I can remember them off the top of my head. Some of them like still beta testing, but we launched this thing called the Showcase, where any junior creator can submit their portfolio, talk about it, and then we invite recruiters and companies to look through people's work and invite them to talk, and basically just getting their work out there because I feel like that's the hardest part, trying to get your work out there. We're doing this thing called the Junior Dialogues, where we essentially go into agencies and brands, hopefully brands. We're doing more agencies where they kind of talk about like how there's a very big underrepresentation of people in the creative industry. I think, if I remember, don't quote me, I think 6% of creatives in the UK are Black. And like the numbers, they get a bit worse as you kind of look through them. So we're trying to go into agencies and kind of just show that there is representation and show how people are getting there into the positions they are in. Also, I feel like that's the two I can remember off the top of my head that I can probably pitch for. But like, we're just trying to find different ways where we can engage young people in the creative industry and create more opportunities and show that to more to the B2B side, like show to agencies there is opportunity and there is talent wherever you look at it. And it will make you money in a way if you're an agency, because I feel like everyone likes to look at a cost side and a return on investment when you're an agency. So I feel like that was a rambling elevator pitch, but like that's the junior in one nutshell.
I think that this work that you're doing is really going to resonate with a lot of people. So thank you so much for talking with me about that background and all of the work that you're doing with the junior. I want to transition a bit because I have one more question for you. Lots of young people want to make change, but they may not know how to get started with that work. What advice would you want to share with those people who may be listening?
Oh, good question. A good question. And I wonder if I can actually provide value for the answer. I would say I'm gonna steal Nike's slogan, just do it. I can't remember how. I mean, I've obviously spoken how, but like if you don't do it, I feel like you're gonna regret not. If this was like the 1980s or the 1970s, it'll be like a whole different bag. But like we're in 2024, most people have a phone, they have Instagram, whether they're on Blue Sky, on Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn. I feel like you just have to talk about the things that you care about. Someone, even if it's just one person, someone will listen. And if it's 100,000 people, they'll listen. But I feel like if you don't just start and if you don't talk about it, you just can't make change. So I feel like my advice is just do it. And I feel like there have been so many times where I look back and I'm like, oh my God, if I didn't do this, it wouldn't have led to this. And if I didn't do that, it wouldn't have led to that. I feel like I wouldn't be here today if I didn't apply to be a member of youth parliament because I feel like that little time in my life has led me on to do so many things and create more change as I go along. So I feel like those little things wouldn't have let me do what I am doing now. And even going further back, not doing the Dynamo mentoring program because I wasn't sold when my teacher was telling me. I didn't know what it would lead to if I didn't. So my advice is just do it because you don't know where the future lies. And if you don't do it, you can't change the future. So yeah.
It was so great to talk with Lánre and to learn more about his work, especially all of his work on the junior. I think Lánre shared so much great advice, and I completely agree with everything he said about how you have to just do it. You never know what could happen in the future, so there's no sense waiting around to make change or to go for opportunities that you might want. I especially liked Lánre's point about how most of us have access to phones and to social media, which makes us so connected and makes it so easy to talk about the things that you care about and to share that with others. So, that is the point that I want to end this last episode of 2024 with. Change comes when you just start talking about the things that you care about. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can find Lánre on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I included those links in the description of this episode. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at Be The Change Media Network. I am working on expanding Be The Change Media Network, which means bringing you more inspiring stories from amazing guests. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave the podcast a rating and a comment because it will help these stories to reach, educate, and inspire more people. And I would also love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys.